Have you ever wondered what happens when the lines between love and obsession blur into a deadly game of cat and mouse? Welcome to Crime and Mystery Cases. Today, we dive into the chilling and baffling case of the fatal obsession, the murder of Laura Edwards. This is a tale of passion, betrayal, and a mystery that remains unsolved to this day. Stay with us as we unravel the dark secrets behind this tragic story. Laura Edwards was a bright, charismatic woman with a promising future. She lived in the peaceful town of Maplewood, where everyone knew each other and crime was almost unheard of. Laura grew up in a loving family with her parents, Michael and Susan Edwards, and her younger brother, Tim. She excelled in school, participated in community events, and had a close-knit group of friends who adored her. From a young age, Laura had a spark that drew people to her. She was the kind of person who could light up a room with her smile. Friends described her as kind, empathetic, and always willing to lend a helping hand. Her dream was to become a teacher, and she was well on her way to achieving that goal. Laura's high school years were filled with achievements. She graduated with honors and earned a scholarship to Maplewood University, where she planned to major in education. Her future seemed bright, and nothing could have prepared her for the darkness that was about to enter her life. It all started innocently enough. Laura met Mark Harris at a local cafe, a popular spot for university students. Mark was a few years older, charming, and seemed to have a magnetic personality. He was well-dressed, articulate, and had an air of confidence that caught Laura's attention. Their connection was instant. They began dating and everything seemed perfect. Mark was attentive, showered Laura with gifts, and made her feel special. Her friends were happy to see her so in love, but some noticed subtle red flags early on. Mark's charm quickly turned into possessiveness. Friends and family noticed changes in Laura. She became withdrawn, less vibrant, and often seemed distracted. There were rumors of Mark's controlling nature, but Laura, blinded by love, dismissed these concerns. She believed Mark's overprotectiveness was a sign of his deep affection for her. Laura's friends tried to intervene, but she was adamant that Mark was misunderstood. She distanced herself from those who questioned her relationship, creating a rift between her and the people who cared about her most. Mark, on the other hand, encouraged this isolation, manipulating Laura into believing that only he truly understood and cared for her. Then came the fights. Neighbors often heard shouting matches from Laura's apartment. Yet, she stayed with him, hoping things would get better. But they never did. Mark's behavior became more erratic, and Laura found herself trapped in a cycle of emotional and psychological abuse. Laura eventually confided in a close friend about the abuse. She showed bruises and spoke of Mark's violent outbursts. The friend urged her to leave him, but Laura was scared. Mark had threatened her, saying that if she ever left, he would ruin her life. The fear of what he might do kept her in the relationship. In a moment of desperation, Laura decided she had to escape. She began making plans to leave Mark, seeking advice from a domestic abuse counselor and researching safe houses. She packed a suitcase and confided in her family about her decision. They were supportive and ready to help her in any way they could. But on a stormy night in June, everything changed. Laura's lifeless body was found in her apartment. The scene was horrific, with clear signs of a violent struggle. Mark was nowhere to be found. Investigators arrived quickly and began piecing together the events of that tragic night. Laura's apartment was in disarray, with signs of a struggle everywhere. Bloodstains, broken furniture, and Laura's phone smashed on the floor painted a grim picture of her final moments. Detective James Carter, a seasoned investigator with over 20 years of experience, led the investigation. He immediately suspected Mark Harris, given the history of abuse and his sudden disappearance. Carter's team began collecting evidence. hoping to find any clues that could lead them to Mark and solve the mystery of Laura's murder. Laura's friends and family were interviewed extensively. They recounted her relationship with Mark, detailing the signs of his controlling behavior and Laura's gradual withdrawal from her social circle. These testimonies painted a clear picture of a toxic relationship that had taken a deadly turn. Detective Carter uncovered disturbing details about Mark's past, including previous relationships that ended abruptly under suspicious circumstances. In each case, the women had experienced similar patterns of control and abuse. However, none had ended in murder, and Mark had managed to evade serious consequences due to a lack of concrete evidence. Searches of Mark's apartment and his known hangouts revealed more unsettling clues. They found a stash of disturbing letters he had written to Laura, filled with obsessive declarations of love and threats if she ever left him. There were also items that suggested Mark had been spying on Laura, including photographs taken without her knowledge and a journal detailing her daily activities. The hunt for Mark Harris intensified. Police issued a nationwide alert, and his face was plastered on every news outlet. Tips poured in from across the country, but each lead seemed to hit a dead end. Mark had vanished without a trace, leaving investigators and Laura's loved ones frustrated and desperate for answers. Meanwhile, the community of Maplewood mourned the loss of Laura Edwards. Her family and friends held a vigil in her honor, lighting candles and sharing memories of the vibrant young woman who had been taken from them too soon. The sense of loss was palpable, and the call for justice grew louder with each passing day. Experts on domestic abuse were brought in to shed light on Mark's behavior. They explained the psychological profile of abusers, detailing how they manipulate, control, and ultimately destroy their victims. Mark fit this profile perfectly, a man who masked his insecurities with charm and charisma, only to reveal a dark and dangerous side behind closed doors. Months turned into years, and the case went cold. Despite numerous tips and sightings, Mark Harris remained elusive. The trail grew colder, and leads became scarcer. The mystery of Laura Edwards' murder became a haunting reminder of the dangers that can lurk behind a charming facade. Laura's family and friends continued to visit her grave, holding on to the hope that one day, justice would be served. The pain of her loss remained fresh, and the questions surrounding her death lingered in their minds. They refused to let her memory fade and kept pushing for answers. Years later, a new detective, Sarah Collins, joined the Maplewood Police Department. Known for her tenacity and fresh perspective, she decided to take another look at Laura's case. Collins believed that somewhere in the old files, there might be a clue that had been overlooked. Collins re-interviewed Laura's friends and family, hoping to find any new details or forgotten memories. She discovered that some of Laura's friends had seen a man resembling Mark Harris in the town months after the murder. These sightings, though unconfirmed, reignited the investigation. Collins discovered discrepancies in Mark's alibis from the night of Laura's murder. Friends who initially vouched for Mark's whereabouts were now hesitant or had conflicting stories. This inconsistency suggested that Mark had manipulated or coerced them into providing false information. Detective Collins presented her findings to Detective Carter, who had retired but remained deeply invested in the case. Carter was impressed with Collins' dedication and agreed to assist her in reopening the investigation. Together, they formed a task force focused on tracking down Mark Harris. The task force began by re-examining all the evidence, from the letters Mark wrote to Laura to the surveillance footage from her apartment building. They followed up on old leads and interviewed potential witnesses who might have seen or interacted with Mark after Laura's death. The renewed effort started to yield results. One witness came forward, describing an encounter with a man matching Mark's description at a remote cabin in the woods. The man had been living off the grid, avoiding contact with the outside world. This tip provided a crucial lead that could finally bring them closer to finding Mark. Police surrounded the cabin at dawn, hoping to catch Mark off guard. As they approached, they saw movement inside. The tension was palpable as they prepared for a potentially dangerous confrontation. Mark was taken into custody without incident. He looked disheveled and unkempt, a stark contrast to the charming and confident man Laura had fallen for. The police transported him back to Maplewood, where he would finally face justice for his actions. In the interrogation room, Mark initially refused to speak. His silence was unsettling, but Detective Collins remained patient. She knew that breaking through his facade would take time and a strategic approach. Collins showed Mark photographs of Laura, reminding him of the woman he once claimed to love. She spoke of Laura's dreams, her kindness, and the impact her death had on her family and friends. Slowly, Mark's composure began to crack. Mark finally began to speak. He admitted to the controlling behavior and the fights but insisted that he never intended to harm Laura. His story was filled with contradictions, and as he spoke, it became clear that he was trying to minimize his involvement in her death. Collins and Carter reviewed Mark's confession, identifying several inconsistencies. They cross-referenced his statements with the evidence collected from Laura's apartment and the witness testimonies. It was clear that Mark was hiding the full truth. A breakthrough came when a forensic expert reanalyzed DNA evidence from the crime scene. They found a match to Mark, further implicating him in Laura's murder. This new evidence was the missing piece needed to build a strong case against him. In court, Mark looked remorseful as the jury delivered their verdict. He was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict brought a sense of closure to Laura's family and friends, who had fought tirelessly for justice. Laura's family and friends held a memorial service to celebrate her life and honor her memory. They spoke of her vibrant spirit, her dreams, and the love she had brought into their lives. Though the pain of her loss remained, they found solace in knowing that justice had been served. Detective Collins and Carter reflected on their journey. The case had been challenging and emotionally draining, but they were grateful for the opportunity to bring closure to Laura's loved ones. They vowed to continue their work, helping other victims of domestic violence find justice. As we conclude today's story, we are reminded of the devastating impact of domestic violence and the importance of vigilance and support for those affected. Laura's story is a sobering reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind a charming facade, and the relentless pursuit of justice by those who refuse to let the truth remain hidden. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time, stay safe and keep your eyes open for the mysteries that surround us. This is Crime and Mystery Cases.